competition wanted the Prince of Wales to play a gay, many-sided natural role. If the Empire's star salesman could drum up trade for Britain's exhausted manufacturers, so much the better. With 5 emperors, 8 kings, and 4 imperial dynasties rendered obsolete by the conflict, there was never a better time to emphasise that the newly minted House of Windsor — George V changed the family name from Saxe-Coburg and Gotha in 1917 to deflect anti-German sentiment — remained the unchanging keystone in the edifice of an empire upon which the sun never set. The slaughter of Tsar Nicholas II of Russia and his family at Ekaterinburg in July 1918 by Bolshevik rebels reinforced this imperial imperative, especially as George V bore an uncanny likeness to the murdered Tsar. Not only did the barbaric incident shake the king's confidence in the innate decency of mankind, it inspired his son's lifetime loathing of the Bolsheviks, the murder of his godfather Nicholas II setting his heart against the Soviets and all their works. Thus, his seemingly endless and arduous imperial tours — during the 1920s he visited some 45 countries and travelled an estimated 150,000 miles by sea and train — were a golden opportunity to reinforce the relevance of the monarchy and to introduce the man who one day would rule. It was a daunting assignment for a somewhat naive young man, still only 25, who was frequently overwhelmed by the straining sea of strange faces, the nervous demands of public speaking, a skill that did not come naturally, and, of course, the endless handshaking. The tone was set on his first tour to Canada in September 1919, where he crisscrossed the country by train, laying wreaths and foundation stones, watching parades and pageants. His arrival was greeted with such hysteria that his right hand was so badly bruised and swollen after shaking so many eager hands that he had to resort to using his left. At times, this worship of the royal personage bordered on the messianic, the prince hearing people cry, "I've touched him, I've touched him," as he walked through the press of flesh. As he laconically observed, when they were unable to pat him in person, hitting or prodding him with a rolled-up newspaper sufficed. It was a remarkable step change from the days of his grandfather, Edward VII. He would arrive at an engagement in his horse-drawn carriage, receive a loyal address, cut a ribbon, and declare something or other open without ever leaving his carriage. This quasi-religious royal adulation was not confined to the colonies. In November 1919, when he completed his marathon 3-month visit to Canada, he headed for a brief tour of Washington and New York, meeting with war-wounded and rubbing shoulders with senators and congressmen. He also paid a private visit to the White House, where President Wilson was recovering from a stroke. America was an unknown quantity, and he was initially apprehensive about his reception. His only previous contact with Americans was during the war, when he reviewed a parade of some 25,000 troops at Koblenz and found himself impressed by their discipline. At the time, the military review received scant publicity, but the story of him dancing with American nurses at a later function sure did. It was no exception. During his East Coast visit, dances laid on in his honour left many a debutante in a swoon. As one of his aides observed, "The prince holds very strongly that he can influence American feeling even better by dancing with senators' daughters than by talking to senators." As the world's most eligible bachelor, he was linked to so many young women that he started a My Brides book where he glued in all the erroneous newspaper stories about when and whom he was to marry. His first visit culminated in a ticker-tape parade through the streets of Manhattan, which was thrilling beyond description. As the prince later recalled, "Half asphyxiated by the smell of gasoline, I found myself sitting up on the back of the motor, bowing and waving like an actor who had been summoned by a tremendous curtain call." Such was the excitement generated by the brief royal progress that playwright Albert E. Thomas was inspired to pen a romantic comedy, strangely prophetic, called Just Suppose, about a prince who falls in love with an American beauty and offers to give up the throne for her hand in marriage. Enthusiasm on the East Coast was matched by wild adulation on the West. The following April, when he stopped in San Diego on his way to Australia and New Zealand aboard HMS Renown, the princely presence excited considerable civic interest. Politically, his arrival on